Hi, we're back, and it's hump day. Hello, hello. Can you guys see me and hear me okay? We're good? Let's get right into it. We have a lot to cover. We are continuing with Nolan Wells. Thank you for being here. Please, yes, make sure to hit the like button. It really helps push the channel out. I appreciate it. And shout out to all the replay viewers and the members. We're going to be having members only all weekend. So get ready for that as well. I've been working behind the scenes on a lot of different things. So we'll be able to talk about those soon. But let's see. I see Debbie's here, Evie. Hello, hello. We're continuing. Nolan Wells autopsy results are released. I got the document. It's a couple pages. We're going to get right into it and through it. We're going to read an article and we're going to watch a couple different clips. I'm also going to, like I said, we're going to read the 5 pages of the autopsy report, but then we'll speak about it in layman's terms because I know sometimes it can be confusing. This case is so weird. The mystery continues. I don't know really what to think about this, but I guess we'll get through the information together. Let me know what you think as we go through the live. I saw Jay Luton here, Amanda, Meow, Debbie, Chris, Selena, Janie, Lindsay. Debbie, thank you for being a member for 10 months. Wow, you've almost been here for, I think you've been here longer than that, but I appreciate you, Debbie. Always stay supporting me. You're awesome. I saw Legally Guilty. Hello. Hello inside the mind of Noel. Don't worry, I haven't forgot about everything else we're covering. I'm working on a bunch of lives. We're going to be covering David tomorrow. We're also going to be starting Kenzie transcripts, working on a few guests, which hopefully works out and will be so, so good. It gets weirder. Yeah, I don't know what to think. So let's read this article by California Post. We'll watch a couple minutes of a TMZ clip. We're going to watch the preliminary independent autopsy results. We're going to listen to Ben Crum talk about those, and then we'll actually get into the actual. Hello, excuse me on the tier. Good to see you. I just saw these results. I wish they would have been more helpful. I'm confused with these results, but we can figure it out together. I'm not a lawyer. I am not a medical examiner. The views expressed in this video are personally my personal opinions and commentary based on publicly available information, media reports, and personal observations. Any statements regarding individuals, events, or organizations are intended for discussion, education, commentary, and entertainment purposes. Hello, Lisi. Good to see you. What and where, when, how? Who, what, when, where, how? Are you talking shit or are you being funny? Hello. Hello, Ramon, Neat Noodle. Let's pull up the article by California Post. Nolan Wells was gruesomely missing body part during preliminary autopsy pathologist report shows. We're going to watch that clip. Let's just read this to get a little bit of, oh, thank you, Melissa. I just got ready really quick. I didn't want to miss this. I'm working on getting all the lives and members only organized and doing, we're going to be covering David for sure, for sure. So keep your eye out probably tomorrow. David and Celeste Rivas Hernandez. So they revenge Austin Metcalf. Case closed. Kate Levinson, hello. It says a pathologist who carried an independent autopsy on Nolan Wells revealed that a crucial part of his body was missing, which hindered his ability to make a ruling on the cause of death. Honestly, it seems a little fishy here. I know sometimes they remove parts to like further examine, but let's read into it and then I'll give more of my opinion. Wells's body did not have a throat following the official postmortem conducted by the Mississippi Medical Examiner's Office, Dr. Roger Mitchell, the former chief medical examiner for Washington, D.C. He did not have a throat. I'm confused. Allegedly, they didn't let the family know either, I think, if they removed it, but, no throat. Yes. And he was fully clothed, which is not adding up with the information that we have that he was, in swim trunks. Fully clothed means he must have had a shirt on, so I'm assuming he must have gone back to the island and changed, and then something could have happened. I have a lot of questions. Honestly, it's really suspicious. How does one throat go missing? I don't freaking know. Um, let's continue. It is assumed the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. Partially as a result, Mitchell said that his ruling on the cause and manner of death of the college football player's death is undetermined pending investigation, with the date of death also unknown. No bueno here. No bueno. We will also be reviewing the interview with his best friend Hudson, Warren Hudson. So we'll do that after we go through the autopsy. Fully clothed is bad news. I know. Removing the throat during an autopsy is not uncommon because the injuries are to the trachea and are usually evident. The retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice, Mitchell wrote. Nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structure is incomplete. Therefore, the pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or cause of death. So it's basically impossible, I think, to find out, which makes me a little suspicious. I'm not going to lie. So here's a little picture of the autopsy, but we'll look at the full autopsy. I have the full 5 pages. Neck structures, side view, front view. Down here it says Jackson County Coroner Bruce Lind Jr. previously told the Post that the results of authorities' autopsy could take weeks while toxicology tests are carried out. Wells' parents flew their son over 800 miles from their home state of Mississippi to Washington, D.C. for the independent autopsy amid the claims the circumstances around his death don't add up. Cum presented preliminary findings Wednesday morning at the NAACP National Convention in Chicago, as well as his heartbroken parents. The second autopsy found that Wells had a mark on the back of his head. I'm assuming, my opinion is he got hit in the back of the head. I think they removed the organs, but the throat, it's giving weird vibes. And I'll tell you guys what I think in a second. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I don't want to make it like, I would consider fully clothed swim trunks, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. I wonder what it meant to the examiner. Well, all the visuals of him, he's not wearing that. He's wearing swim trunks. So it's very suspicious. Exactly. If they're sending to second ME, well, there's a problem here. They didn't get the body for 6 days. Allegedly, this medical examiner, there's discrepancies. They also didn't let the family know what was going on throughout the autopsy. So I feel a huge civil lawsuit coming for sure. It describes a focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue in the back of the head that was only 12 by 8 inches in the lower part of the skull. However, Wells's body had suffered significant decomp, making it impossible to know if there was bruising on the skin. Okay, so that's all of the article that I wanted to read. Now let's get into some clips, and we're going to watch Crump talk about these findings. Yeah, I mean, normal decomp, I don't know. Does this fully clothed just mean not naked? No, I think it means like maybe he had a shorts on and a shirt and shoes. I'm assuming if he drowns, maybe something underwater hit him. I'm not sure. It's still sus. I would consider fully clothed swim trunks, yeah, and flip-flops. Let's watch this clip by TMZ. It's 4 minutes, and then we're gonna watch a CBS one, and then we'll get into the Crump preliminary findings. It's very unfortunate, you know, that we've been waiting for this and the family's been waiting for this. And I don't know that we'll ever be able to get any answers.
Conference today, and their attorney, Ben Crump, revealed the results of the independent autopsy. Crump says that there was something on Nolan Wells' skull, his head, that revealed a possible injury, a possible head injury. This is more complicated than it seems. Crump said that it was the focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue in the back of the head. And so that suggests, with red discoloration, that there might have been some sort of injury. Crump did not elaborate on that. Now, we should say, and we are not medical professionals, but WebMD talks about this, and we've actually seen this in other autopsies, where when a body is put on a slab, that can cause discoloration, that can cause the pooling of blood. Now, we don't know that happened here, but we do know that this independent autopsy followed the official autopsy, where presumably Nolan Wells' body was put on a slab. So, in terms of what caused this discoloration, this redness, Crump never elaborated. We certainly don't know, but there seem to be alternate theories here. Now, Crump said the cause and manner of death, according to this independent medical examiner, are still undetermined. He said there were problems conducting the autopsy, that the throat area had been removed, presumably by the medical examiner in the official autopsy, for some kind of further examination. And we have no idea what the official autopsy shows because it has not yet been revealed. This is the.
Okay, if it was removed for autopsy or further examination, why wouldn't they give it back with the body? I'm a little confused. Honestly, this is not good for the medical examiner. I think the police department, people, and medical examiner is going to it's going to be huge lawsuits. Not adding up. No. Let's continue.
Independent autopsy that we're talking about. Crump says that the medical examiner for the independent autopsy, although he couldn't determine cause and manner of death, could not rule out foul play. So there are not a lot of answers here. There are interesting facts, but the reasons behind what Crump is talking about have not been revealed yet. We don't know if those reasons are something that the independent medical examiner knows and has not yet revealed, whether there are going to be more tests that might show whether there was an injury to the head or whether this was pooling based on the body laying on a slab. We don't know. And we don't know what the official medical examiner is going to say regarding all of this. And it is possible, if it was pooling, that it's something that the official medical examiner didn't see, but the independent examiner did because of the length of time the body was laying on the slab and when the autopsies were performed. So we don't know that. Crump is reiterating that he wants videos, he wants information, he wants to know what happened to Nolan Wells. And he says that as you piece things together, listening to witnesses and looking at video, the picture is going to become clearer. He did not say this is a case of foul play. He did invoke the name of other people who have died as a result of racial murders, including Emmett Till. And he's not necessarily linking that with Nolan Wells, but he's certainly raising it. So this was a presentation given to the Mississippi chapter of the NAACP. Nolan Wells' mother and father both spoke talking about the nightmare they're enduring and the fact that there are people actually accusing them of being racist, which is really kind of abhorrent, because they have not really reached any public conclusion at all, one way or the other, about whether race plays a factor in this. So we will see. But right now, what we have is preliminary findings of a medical examiner, and it is unclear what caused that redness on Nolan Wells' skull. And hopefully, we are going to hear more about that, both from the independent and official medical examiners.
I don't know the logistics behind why the states is taking longer. I could see why it would for toxicology, but I'm a little confused, like how the independent was be able to be done so quick. We still haven't heard anything about the states. Where is his throat? Why wasn't full transparency provided to his family? Because apparently they didn't know anything, and they didn't know that they would be receiving a body without a throat. Okay, right off the bat, I'll be honest. When I first heard that, like, okay, missing body part or organs, I was thinking for sure, like, organ trafficking. That's like the first thing that came to my mind. And then second, I was like, okay, maybe strangulation or hanging and someone's trying to hide it. But then I'm like, okay, slow down. Let's read the autopsy. Let's get through the facts because they do remove things to further examine, but also why wasn't the family given full transparency on about everything? So let's watch the CBS clip and then we'll jump over to TMZ for the press conference with Ben Krupp where he talks about the autopsy results. And then we'll go through the actual autopsy because I do have it.
In the death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells have been released. The cause and manner of death have been ruled undetermined, but civil rights attorney Ben Crump says foul play cannot be ruled out. Crump announced the findings during a press conference this morning where Nolan Wells' parents also pleaded for more transparency.
And new video may reveal the last moments Wells was seen alive. Investigators say he disappeared during a 4th of July boat trip with friends and was found dead 2 days later. Let's bring in Skylar Henry, who has been following this news conference today. Skylar, what have you learned about what has happened?
Sure, guys. Well, we are reviewing some of the notes that Attorney Crump put forth during this press conference. As you pointed out there, Vlad, the cause of Wells's death still undetermined, pending an investigation, and that is sort of the crux of where we have been with this case from the very beginning, as not only the family of Nolan Wells, but those in the community have all called for transparency in this case and more clarity from the lead investigative agency, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, to try to put together a bit more clarity as it relates to a timeline in terms of what may have happened to the 18-year-old on that July 4th weekend. Crump went on to say that based off of the preliminary findings that Wells's body was too decomposed based off of the time the body was sent to Washington, D.C. for that third-party autopsy that was conducted by a well-accomplished pathologist that specializes in this sort of case. But the pathologist also found that the body had marks and also noticed discoloration, red discoloration on the back of his head. But that is something that isn't exactly uncommon, but also something that could potentially be tied to just the manner of which Wells's body was recovered in the or near the ocean in the first place. They are also saying that it is incredibly important to try to figure out what happened to Nolan in terms of him entering the water, whether that was something that was an accident, something that was on purpose. And then also they say that they are calling for more clarity from the medical examiner in Mississippi who conducted the first autopsy on Nolan Wells, saying that there could potentially be a bit more answers there as it relates to additional clues and findings, especially considering that they are still waiting for the parts of his body, his throat, and the back of his neck, something that wasn't a part of the second autopsy, to potentially give a bit more clarity in terms of Nolan's airway. Could he have possibly drowned? What were the circumstances around a possible drowning?
Why wouldn't the state ME, let them know that they were going to remove the throat, and then it sounds so eerie, but like give them the throat with a body when it went to the Washington?
And was it an accident at all? I think it's also important to stress here that based off of these preliminary findings, that there is also not a toxicology report yet. That is something that we are waiting on from the Mississippi medical examiner, something that they had said initially will take several weeks when this autopsy was conducted 2 weeks ago, in terms of that potentially giving us more clarity as well in terms of these findings. But as you pointed out, Jolene, new information that we have been seeing as it relates to this case includes that video that was sent into TMZ that shows a man in similar blue trunks that match the photo of Nolan Wells that was also taken on that day. It could very well be some of the last footage of him seen alive. We know that his friends left Horn Island, which is about 10 miles off of Mississippi's Gulf Coast, about 30 minutes or so after that video was taken, or excuse me, about an hour and a half after that video was taken, because they were concerned about the boat that they were on taking on water. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions, especially from Nolan's parents, because they say that his cell phone and keys were found with the friends, not with Nolan, who they say chose to stay behind on Horn Island to quote unquote meet with a girl. We know that his friends have cooperated with law enforcement officials up until this time, but officials have not given us any sort of indication in terms of what may be happening going forward in terms of the clarity and timeline in this case. We should point out that Crump and his legal team are also asking for this pathologist and his findings to be presented to a grand jury. We also know that this case will be going to a grand jury to determine whether any criminal charges should be brought forth at all in this case. But guys, obviously still a lot of unanswered questions here.
Tyler Henry in Atlanta, thank you so much.
Let's bring in CBS News contributor Jessica Levinson to talk more about this. So Jessica, what you just heard from Skylar, what we know from what Attorney Crump has released, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that what Skylar said in terms of unanswered questions is exactly right. What we have today is, frankly, more information, but more information that is undetermined in terms of cause of death, in terms of exactly what happened in those last few minutes and hours before Mr. Wells did die. And so what we have here is an independent autopsy. As Skylar said, it's not a toxicology report. There were aspects of this independent autopsy that were, I don't want to say compromised, but made more difficult because there was a first autopsy. And at this point, I think we're just at a place where you can't rule anything in or out. I know for people who want answers, that's difficult, but by definition, undetermined means exactly that.
There is this new footage released of Wells in the hours before he was found dead. What do you think investigators are hoping to piece together with that potential evidence?
So I think at this point, investigators are just trying to have a timeline of what happened. As we heard thus far, friends are cooperating. They're talking about why the phone was left on the boat, whether I think part of the reason that we're interested in this footage is exactly where he was at different times, whether he was in swim trunks or clothed. Reporting indicates that he was found face down, fully clothed. They're just trying to piece together before the time of death, what happened leading up to that. And every piece of evidence, like a video or testimony from friends, will be part of putting that narrative together.
All right.
Fully clothed. So he had on more clothes than we've seen in those videos. If that's true, then he was doing something on the island. He has discoloration and whatnot on the back of his head. Therefore, we can assume he got hit in the head or he fell and hit his head. I don't know. Let's actually look at the autopsy before we get into Crump talking about it, because I want us to see it for ourselves first, and then we can go in there and hear what he has to say. So here is the autopsy dated July 19th, 2026. Cause of death undetermined pending investigation. Manner of death undetermined pending investigation. The forensic pathologist was retained to perform a second autopsy examination on the body of Nolan Xavier Wells. Name of decedent is Nolan Xavier Wells, age 18, race black, gender male, date of death unknown. Second autopsy date July 10th, 2026. Preliminary findings. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, occipital region, etiology unknown. The body received after initial autopsy. Marked decomposition. Coronal incision of the scalp. The brain was removed. Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso. Organs removed. Accompanying the body in the body cavity. Anterior internal neck structures absent. Not received with the body. Why would the first ME give the body without the body fully intact as much as it needs to be to go to the second medical examiner? I'm very confused about that part. 2. Additional procedures performed during second autopsy. A. Bilateral facial dissection. No fractures, no evidence of deep tissue injury. B. Posterior head dissection. 1 focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head. No fractures. C. Posterior neck dissection. 1 no fractures, no evidence of deep tissue injury. D. Rib exposure dissection. No fractures, no evidence of deep tissue injury. Pelvic dissection. Same. No fractures, no evidence of deep tissue injury. F. Subcutaneous and deep soft tissue dissection of the back, buttocks, arms, and legs. No evidence of deep tissue injury. Remote healed scars. A. Left ankle. Histology submitted. Toxicology not performed. Okay, that also I'm questioning. Maybe the first medical examiner, they're waiting on toxicology results, but why couldn't the second one do toxicology? And I'm wondering if it had to do with the level of decomp of the body, maybe with, because you have to remember from the first ME to them receiving the body in Washington was 6 days. And then, of course, all this other time. So I'm wondering if time is playing a huge factor here and made it more complicated to get that second toxicology. But that's very unfortunate because do we trust the initial ME? No. He didn't give the neck. He didn't give the body in full back to the second ME. I don't know why. And it's just very scary. Preliminary discussion opinion. This forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells. The second autopsy performed on Nolan Wells revealed marked decompositional changes. Marked decomposition can obscure the presence or absence of bruising on the skin surface, especially during a second autopsy examination. For these reasons, additional dissection procedures not performed during the first autopsy examination were performed to rule out potential blunt force injuries responsible for the death. These procedures included facial dissection, posterior head and neck dissection, dissection of the ribs, pelvic dissection, subcutaneous and deep soft tissues, and dissection of the back, buttocks, arms, and legs. There were no fractures or deep tissue injuries identified. However, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8-inch focal area of red discoloration and the deep soft tissues overlying the occipital bone. The etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that this finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissections were not performed. Okay, so if it says right here, in the first autopsy, the posterior head and neck dissections were not performed. So why is he missing structures of the neck and his throat? And again, why didn't it go to Washington with the remainder of the body? I don't know. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the internal neck structures. The tracheal and laryngeal cartilages, thyroid horn, and hyoid bone were not received with the body. It is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. The retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. Nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, the pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or cause of death. Because the initial autopsy rightfully removed and dissected each organ, there are additional limitations inherent in the second autopsy of Nolan Wells. The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and lungs for water and directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. In addition, the original toxicology results had not been received at the time of this report. Lastly, in cases where a death has occurred in or around a body of water with suspicion of drowning, it is important to confirm how that person entered the water. This information is especially important for those deaths of persons who can swim, as in the case with Nolan Wells. At this time, this forensic pathologist does not know the condition of Nolan Wells, conscious or unconscious, forced or unforced, before entering the water. Definitive circumstances of death are required to determine the manner of death. For these reasons, the pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. With the following questions still outstanding. 1. What were the circumstances that led to Nolan Xavier Wells entering the water? 2. What was the body position when found? 3. Was there water in the airway? 4. Is there evidence of injuries to the anterior neck structures? 5. Is there any evidence of intracranial hemorrhage? 6. What was the composition of the stomach contents? 7. What are the toxicology report findings? The best classification for the cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells is undetermined, pending investigation. Here's a diagram. I don't know. I don't want to say what I'm thinking because it's probably like so dramatic. And it could just be that maybe, okay, what happened to his head? Did someone hit him in the head? Or was he drunk and maybe fell and hit a rock? Where is his throat? Is that just a thing where like the first medical examiner they're doing for their testing, but why not be transparent to the family and the correct people about why the body wasn't going to be transferred in full to Washington? And see, did they do that to hide maybe the reason of something, maybe of why he could have been killed? I'm assuming strangulation or like, I don't want to say hanging, death by hanging, but something was, I'm assuming, noticeable in the throat, and maybe that's why they removed it. I don't know. I could just be jumping to conclusions here. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there that could possibly be possible. Here's where front, and here's the back. This is where he had the red discoloration of soft tissue. So it's like right above his neck and the back of his head. And then here's more red discoloration, soft tissue, back occipital, neck structures. So here's a picture of it. And this is what's absent. I didn't know they removed your throat. Yeah, I did 4D love style. We're going to go over that right now. So here's a side view. Here's a front view. This is what was absent. I don't know. I don't know, y'all. This is very scary. All possibilities. Yes, all possibilities. So let's see where I put this into ChatGPT because I wanted to understand and ask some questions. And here's what they said. After reviewing the second autopsy report in full, the most important takeaway is this. The report does not conclude that Nolan Wells was assaulted, drowned, or died accidentally. Instead, it explains why the forensic pathologist could not reliably determine the cause or manner of death because critical evidence was unavailable or compromised. 1. Cause of death versus manner of death. The report lists the cause of death as pending and manner of death as pending investigation. These are different. Cause of death equals what physically killed him. Examples would be drowning, gunshot wound, overdose, blunt force trauma, and manner of death is how the death happened. Possible manners are natural, accident, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. The pathologist says he cannot determine either one. 2. Why the second autopsy was different? This was not the original autopsy. It was performed after the first autopsy. Decomposition had progressed, organs had been removed, the brain had been removed, and the neck structures were missing. Those limitations are extremely important because they prevented the second pathologist from answering several major forensic questions. 3. The biggest new finding. The report repeatedly highlights one finding, a large area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of the head, the occipital region. The diagram on page 4, which we already seen, shows this location clearly. Let me put the diagram back up so you guys can see. Here we go. So this is the diagram on page 4. However, the pathologist immediately says he does not know what caused it. Possible explanations can include decomposition, post-autopsy changes, artifact from the first autopsy, hemorrhage before death, another unknown cause. He specifically says the etiology is unknown. This is medical language for, quote, I don't know what caused this, end quote. Why this finding matters. The report does not say, quote, this is blunt force trauma. It also does not say, quote, this proves assault, end quote. Instead, it says this finding is important enough that it deserves further investigation because it cannot currently be explained. That is a much more cautious statement. Number 4, there's no skull fracture. One thing stands out. Despite the red discoloration, there is no skull fracture, no scalp laceration, no underlying bone injury were found. Normally, severe blunt force trauma often produces fractures, tearing, and bruising patterns. None of these were identified. That doesn't completely exclude trauma, though, but it weakens the ability to conclude trauma caused death. 5, extensive dissections were performed. The second pathologist performed a much more extensive dissection than were apparently done initially. These included facial, posterior head, posterior neck, ribs, pelvis, back, buttocks, arms, and legs. The result, no fractures, no deep tissue injuries. That is a significant negative finding. 6, the missing neck structures, which is interesting. This is probably the largest limitation discussed. The report states that these structures were absent. The hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, the larynx, and the trachea. These structures had apparently been removed during the first autopsy and were not available during the second examination. Those structures are often examined for strangulation, neck compression, hanging, and blunt neck trauma. Wait, is that what it says? Yeah. Without them, the second pathologist cannot rule out neck injury. Notice the wording, though. He does not say there was a neck injury. He says, I cannot rule it out. Those are very different conclusions. Let's say, like, okay, someone was hiding something, right? That would be a good structure to have missing, right? Because they can't prove whether it was hanging, strangulation. But why would the ME want to keep that or hide that? You know, that's just making assumptions that the ME is involved, law enforcement's hiding something. Is it about race? I don't know. I mean, doesn't look too good now, but we still need that initial autopsy report, and I'm wondering where that is and who is involved in that process entirely. So I think that's something that could be looked into. Hey, HCB. Well, I think he was put in the water after he died. I don't know. They aren't saying drowning, so that is interesting. Yeah, but with the lungs and the throat, I don't know that they can without those, they can't determine if it was drowning or not. I'm shook, you guys. I really am. 7, the lungs could not be evaluated. Like, this is absolutely wild. If I'm not mistaken, on Riley Strain's autopsy, I think had drowning, right? Let me look at that. Because I've been talking about how this reminds me of Riley Strain. What was? Yeah, I think they found water in his lungs, didn't they? Yeah. Drowning and ethanol intoxication. I'm going to pull that up and compare. When a full autopsy is performed, they usually includes a forensic pathologist will use to preserve the organs for further analysis. But why not tell that to the second medical examiner? There's transparency issues clearly here, according to Ben Crump. So the lungs could not be evaluated. This is another huge limitation because the organs had already been removed. He could not directly evaluate the lungs or the airway. These are amongst the most important organs when evaluating possible drowning. Without them, he could not answer where was there lungs in the water and was there water in the airway. Those are central questions in any suspected drowning. The stomach also could not be evaluated. The stomach contents were unavailable. Normally, investigators may look for water, food, timing of last meal, swallowed debris. These observations can help with reconstruct events. They could not be made here. Toxicology is missing. The report specifically notes that the original toxicology results had not yet been received when this opinion was written. That means that the pathologist did not yet know whether drugs, alcohol, or other substances were present. Without toxicology, the medical picture remains incomplete. The decomp problem. The report repeatedly emphasizes marked decomposition. This matters because decomposition can mimic bruising, hide bruising, discolor tissues, destroy evidence, and make injuries impossible to interpret. That is one reason the pathologist refuses to overinterpret the red discoloration. The biggest unanswered questions. The report lists 7 unanswered questions. How did Nolan enter the water? What was his position when found? Was water present in the airway? Was there injury to the neck? Was there intracranial hemorrhaging? What were the stomach contents? What does the toxicology show? These questions demonstrate that the pathologist believes essential evidence is still missing. So wild. Those MEs should have been in direct contact, honestly. It's definitely making it way more sus than it originally seemed, and it was sus to begin with. I agree, inside of the mind of Noel. So the major discrepancies, okay, of this autopsy. 1, significant posterior head discoloration, but no explanation. This is the finding most people will focus on. The report says it exists. The report also says the cause is unknown. This is not a contradiction, but it leaves an unresolved question. 2, large area of discoloration without fractures. Normally, if a severe impact produced extensive bleeding in the back of the head, one might also expect associated injuries such as fractures or scalp damage, none were identified. Possible explanations can include decomposition artifact, postmortem change, subtle soft tissue hemorrhage, less severe impact, another process. This report does not resolve which is correct. 3, the inability to assess drowning. The report cannot answer one of the most important questions. Did Nolan drown? That is because the lungs are unavailable and the airway is unavailable. So the report neither confirms nor excludes drowning. It's just like, is it a coincidence? But I don't believe in coincidence that like the main structures of his body to determine drowning or strangulation, etc., are like missing. Like, is that a coincidence? Because I don't think so. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I don't want to point fingers at the ME or the police involved, but it smells fishy to me. How do you lose organs? And where the hell are they? If they didn't go with the body and they no longer need the body because they already just waiting on toxicology results, then why not return those organs with the body, etc.? And why is it taking so long? And where's the toxicology report? I don't know. Something feels very off to me. Inability to evaluate the strangulation. Because the neck structures were missing, the report cannot evaluate many injuries that would be relevant to neck trauma. Again, this report does not suggest strangulation occurred. It simply states it cannot assess the possibility. Missing toxicology. As I just mentioned, any interpretation of behavior, impairment, or physiological cause is incomplete until toxicology is available. So the overall forensic interpretation is the report is remarkably cautious. This pathologist avoids drawing conclusions beyond what the evidence supports. The report does not include homicide, accident, drowning, assault, overdose, or natural death. Instead, it documents important limitations, highlights one unexplained soft tissue finding at the back of the head, and explains why those limitations prevent a definitive opinion. The final classification remains undetermined, which is pending investigation because too many critical questions cannot be answered with the available evidence. Now, does this mean this victim could have been strangled or hung? Yes, but with an important qualification. The report means that strangulation or hanging cannot be ruled out based on the second autopsy alone. It does not mean that there's evidence that Nolan Wells was strangled or hanged. Those are very different conclusions. Here's why. The pathologist says he cannot rule it out. The report states that the anterior neck structures were not available during the second autopsy because they had already been removed during the initial autopsy. And those parts that were removed include the hyoid bone, thyroid cartilage, laryngeal cartilages, and trachea. Those structures are amongst the most important parts when investigating manual strangulation, ligature strangulation, hanging, and blunt force trauma to the neck. Without being able to inspect them himself, the second pathologist writes that he cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributing factor or cause of death. Does this suggest strangulation? Not by itself. If a forensic pathologist suspects strangulation, they typically look for findings such as bruising in the neck muscles, hemorrhage around the hyoid bone, fractures of the hyoid or thyroid cartilages, petechial hemorrhages, ligature marks, and deep soft tissue hemorrhage. This report does not document any of those findings. Instead, it says the necessary structures were not available for examination. Does this suggest hanging? Also not by itself. In hanging death, the pathologists often evaluate those same factors. Again, because those structures were absent during the second autopsy, the pathologist could neither confirm nor exclude hanging based on his own examination. What is the pathologist actually communicating? The wording is very careful. He is essentially saying, quote, I cannot tell you whether there were neck trauma because the most important evidence was unavailable to me. That is not the same thing as saying there was neck trauma or I believe this is strangulation. One thing that is interesting is that the report specifically highlights an unexplained area of red discoloration at the back of the head, but it does not report deep tissue injury or fractures in the posterior neck dissection. If there had been obvious trauma to the back of the neck during the second examination, you would generally expect the report to describe it. Instead, it repeatedly notes no fractures and no evidence of deep tissue injury in the neck dissection, while emphasizing that the missing front neck structures prevented a complete evaluation. So we know there's a lot of possibilities here. Accidental drowning or another accidental cause, a natural or medical event, or a non-accidental cause. But its conclusion remains undetermined pending investigation. So unfortunately, we don't know yet. And this is just terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So the parts are missing. So the parts that are missing are crucial to determine. Yes, are you, Barbie? Exactly. That's why I ask you guys, is that a coincidence or was it an accident? They just decided to ship the body minus all of those missing parts. Are they missing or does the other ME still have due to testing? Well, that's another issue is that the family and their team feel there hasn't been genuine transparency. So I don't know that the second pathologist knew he was going to get a body without those organs because it sounds like he didn't. And organ trafficking is a thing. Like, I hate to say this, but because YouTube might knock me, but like the dark web is a thing. Killing people and cutting them up and taking their organs is a thing. You know, it's very much real. And it happens a lot more than we think. So there's that. I'm trying to think of the case where there was another case where and I want to say he was African American as well. And he was missing his organs too. It was in that lake where there's a bunch of deaths that occur. What's the name of that case? Now that's going to bother me. There's a case very similar to this, and it's kind of freaking me out. Let me see if I have it in my notes. I'll have to find it. Oh, there we go. Jelani Day. Hello. This case, the Jelani Day case, he was discovered floating in the river Illinois for 11 days. Do you guys remember this? This was 2021. He, several of his internal organs and the brain was also missing. Jelani Day, I don't think there has been true justice for Jelani Day, or I'll have to look into that and find out what happened to it because I never have covered it, but now I want to cover it because it's very, very similar to Jelani Day case. And Jelani Day, like I said, is out of Illinois River in 2021, and his organs were absolutely missing. And I don't remember if it was like due to decomp as well and possible like being liquefied or if someone took them. I can't remember that, but that's a case that was huge. There was a huge deal around the people collecting for science. They got charged for trafficking organs. Never heard this. Yeah, Jelani Day is one of those cases I was like, what the heck? I'm curious if they will get access to the missing parts. I'm curious too, Jeannie. And some shady funeral homes have done it and got caught doing it to people that donated their body to science. Why would they keep his lungs to a tox report or the throat? Toxicology can take a few weeks. Dr. Mitchell has also clarified that it's standard for initial pathologists to retain the organs. I don't know. A death happens and big money is made. Big money. Okay, let's watch. It's a 20-minute clip of Crump talking about the autopsy. So I want to watch that. And then we're going to watch one of Nolan's quote unquote best friends, Warren Hudson, gave his first interview, and we're going to watch that right after. So please make sure to hit the like button. This is a dark case. RIP Nolan Wells. Very, very sad.
Board certified forensic pathologists performed a preliminary report on the death of Nolan Xavier Wells. He conducted and presented this report on July 19th, 2026. Preliminary report, second autopsy, death of Nolan Xavier Wells. Cause of death, undetermined, pending investigation. And we'll explain that as we go through the report this morning. The manner of death, undetermined, pending investigation. Statement of examination. This forensic pathologist was retained to perform a second autopsy examination on the body of Nolan Xavier Wells. Name of decedent, Nolan Xavier Wells. Age, 18 years old. Race, black. Gender, male. Date of death, unknown. Second autopsy date was performed on July 10th, 2026. Preliminary findings, and this is significant. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation. He said corona incision of the scalp, brain removal, Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso, and he talked about the organs being removed as is common, accompanied in the body.
Some people in the background, the gas.
In the body cavity. And that when you have an autopsy, the organs are removed from the body and they're dissected and examined. And then they're put back in a bag within inside the body. So when they're buried, their remains will all be with them. But in this occasion, if there's going to be a second autopsy, then the organs are put in the body cavity so the second pathologist could be able to examine the organs as well. Very significant for Dr. Mitchell was that the anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. And we'll explain that in just a minute. And then it talks about the additional procedures performed during the second autopsy. And we'll go into the paragraphs on that there because he explains it better in his narrative. So where's the first page of the discussion? Not the diagram yet. You can keep the diagram over there. Move this back, Lisa. So he talks in the preliminary discussion opinion. This forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells. And that's important. He talks about the fact that we didn't get to see the body when it was first recovered, like the medical examiner working for Mississippi would have seen it. He talked about the second autopsy performed on Nolan Wells reveal marked decompensation or changes. Marked decompensation can obscure the presence and absence of bruising on the skin surface, especially during a second autopsy examination. What he's saying, because the body was so decomposed that you couldn't tell if there was bruises or abrasions on the body when he received it on the 10th of July. For these reasons, additional dissection procedures not performed during the first autopsy examination were performed to rule out potential blunt force injuries responsible for the death. These procedures included facial dissection, posterior head and neck dissection, dissection of the ribs, the pelvic, dissection of the subcutaneous and deep soft tissue, dissection of the back, the buttocks, the arms, and legs. He did all of this to rule out things. He ruled out there were no fractures or deep tissue injuries identified. This was very important because he wanted to be very thorough and very transparent, because transparency is the key to getting to the answers of why Nolan Wells is not with us. So he did that there and was very straightforward, very open, very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here.
So if they were not performed, why would they keep those parts?
Limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said,
Why wouldn't the throat go with the body? Maybe if they were doing further examination, like I said, but why didn't they know that? Kate says because he's an asshat and he's covering up for someone. Interesting. Differing opinions.
nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency. Because the initial autopsy rightfully removed and dissected each organ, there are additional limitations inherent in the second autopsy of Nolan Wells. The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and the lungs for water and directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. He said it is very significant as to what the initial forensic scientists who got to review the body when it was recovered. We have heard from our call center people saying the body wasn't waterlogged. Well, we need to know those things. But unfortunately, because the body was decomposed and the organs have already been dissected, those are things we can only get from the initial autopsy. So therefore, again, the manner and cause of death is undetermined until further investigation. We are hopeful that the Mississippi medical examiner would give Dr. Mitchell an opportunity to see their photographs and their observations to the condition of Nolan Wells' body closer in time to July 4th. That is very important, and we have to continue to demand transparency, President Johnson.
So, okay, well, that's good that they could share information. But I'm a little suspicious on why they didn't know they were going to be getting a body without organs. And if something happens to the initial autopsy, then I think there's a cover up. Like, yeah, Barbie said it. Then watch them be too decomposed or mishandled for this. Yeah. It is a little bit sketch. Okay, let's. Ooh, this is at the NAACP. Yes, it is. Let's jump over to an interview he did about this with TMZ. He speaks out
talk
after
about what they've found so far and what they are hoping to find from the authorities down in Mississippi. Ben, welcome back to TMZ Live.
Hey, thank you, Charles, for having me. Thank you for covering this matter.
Yeah, we have been all over this story, and I know everybody wants answers, and we are doing our best to try and see what we can find. But with this autopsy, the independent autopsy that you did, you mentioned that obviously, I think the part that people are really focusing on is that you mentioned that there was this discoloration, this red coloration on the back of Nolan's head. Did the examiner who looked at him have any inkling about what that might be? Could it be blunt force trauma? And I understand that the cause of death and manner is undetermined, but is it possible that it was blunt force trauma?
Well, he wants to be able to give his theories and opinions before the grand jury in Mississippi as to the possible causes of the red discoloration in the back of Nolan Wells' head near the occipital region of the brain. And so it's very significant. He concluded that it was undetermined, pending further investigation, the manner and cause of death. But he did find that very significant that you had this red discoloration in the back of his brain in that occipital region of the brain, of the head. Also, he found it very significant. He said that they did not send his throat with his body in the second autopsy. He said when he was the chief medical examiner of DC, this is something that's common. He said normally he would do it when they were investigating and studying whether there were fractures to the neck or some kind of, compressions to his vertebrae.
Okay, if it's common, then why didn't they know that they were going to get the body without that? Just transparency and communication. Chain of custody here is not very clear. The good thing is they already know everybody is expecting a cover up, so they either have to do it right or be fired because of one mistake. There will be a lawsuit by Crump's office. I think there's going to be quite a few here. I'm with you, Janie. I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully the first ME is cooperative. And I'm also really wondering about what he was wearing exactly. I know they say he was fully clothed, but that means that I think he had shorts on, shoes, and a shirt. We've seen the video of him allegedly arguing or some altercation. And then we saw one yesterday where he was just wearing swim trunks. I guess I would want to know what exactly he was wearing, because that would also give us an idea of if he was on the island, he was able to get clothes. Were they his? Were they someone else's? Could kind of give some information on the timeline. Again, the back of the head, I think he could have been hit, or maybe fell and possibly, I don't know if it's like, I'm not from there, so I don't know if, is there rocks? Like, it's an island, it's a lake. Is there rocks? Could he have been hella drunk and then just fell and hit his head? Like, I guess I need more details to make that assumption. But it was swim trunks. Cajun Navy posted about it. Yeah, I saw that, but was that after or before this new finding? Because him being fully clothed was just released today. So, oh, you're saying the Cajun Navy said it was, they found him with just swim trunks? Yeah, more info needed.
Break.
Right.
So that is significant. He found, and the most significant thing he said, what is the crux of the matter that we do not know, and that is what was the condition of Nolan Wells' body when he entered the water? Was he conscious or was he unconscious? Was he forced into the water or was he unforced into the water? He said those are going to be very significant in a potential drowning death case where you had a person who was able to swim.
Ben, was your examiner able to, I know you said that just like the throat was removed, what about the lungs? That you mentioned that that the initial autopsy, that the lungs had been dissected, but was your examiner able to see the lungs at all, or were they also removed?
No, they were able to see the lungs. However, Charles, remember the state medical examiner for Mississippi got to observe the body when it was first recovered. And that Dr. Roger Mitchell, the independent pathologist that we hired, he would not have seen the body until 6 days later. And the body had, as he said, severe decomposed. And it is one of those things that he is going to have to rely on photographs that were taken by the Mississippi medical examiner. We would believe that they would have taken photographs and their observations, whether there was water in the lungs and water in his airways. We know that some from the United Cajun Navy said that his body didn't seem bloated when they found him, that they didn't see his body as waterlogged. So all these things are significant as we try to figure out why Nolan Wells is dead.
Yeah, Ben, where Howard Nolan,
I said this yesterday as well. Where is the criminal attorney? I'm assuming that he's involved, but we haven't seen him really on any of the press
Nolan's
conferences.
parents, how did they receive, when I'm sure before the news conference this morning, you had gone over the autopsy results, the independent autopsy results with them. How were they when they got those results? Was it disappointing to them? Were they, obviously they want to know what happened to their son. Were they disappointed that, because of all those conditions you just mentioned, the examiner was not able to determine a manner or cause of death?
Well, Charles, they were alarmed, as many of us were, at the, red discoloration in the back of his head. They were alarmed that he didn't have his throat with the body. And, they want answers. They have been very consistent. They do not accept that nobody didn't know anything, that nobody didn't see anything. And so when you think about the fact that Reverend Al and Mr. Tyler Perry and Mr. Terrell Owens has put up this $125,000 reward, that is because we know somebody saw something. Somebody knows something. There were over 300, 400 people out there on Horn Island that day. We, on our Nolan Wells tip line, we've received over hundreds of calls with video, people saying what they saw, people having photographs. And it's important that the people who knew something, who saw something, that they call us. Is critically important.
To that point, Ben, I don't know if you've seen, there's a video that we were able to obtain, and we posted this yesterday. And I don't know if you have seen it yet, but the person who shot it pointed this out, gave a copy of this to the police because they believe that it.
I truly feel that someone possibly knows something. I know. Why do I think that? There were so many people there. I believe they do have a criminal lawyer.
Could
So
be
sad.
Nolan. There's an image of a young man who's bent over on the back deck of a boat. And the trunks certainly look like the same color that Nolan was wearing on July 4th. And, all we can see, he never stands up, so we can't see his face. But they thought this could be Nolan. And I'm wondering if the family has seen this, or if you're at any contact with any of Nolan's friends who might have seen this, who could say, yeah, that's him, because the police are trying to determine that. We don't know if they've figured out if it's him. Have you seen this video?
Well, my team of investigators and our team of lawyers have received that video and received many others. And we received witnesses saying that they say it's Nolan, but until we can confirm these allegations, we want to be careful to say that witnesses have said that this is Nolan. And we also have videos where you have people having exchanges, disputes, and people have said that was Nolan. So we're trying to dot every I and cross every T, because it's so critically important that this family gets answers, that the country gets answers.
You said that your investigators have been getting a lot of tips about videos and photos, and I'm I'm wondering if there's anybody coming forward, because you said something that is so true, where there's so many people who are out there in Horn Island. Whatever it is that happened to Nolan, even if it is accidental, but whatever it is that happened, it just seems implausible that no one has seen anything. I'm wondering if you are having any luck hearing from people who are actually on the island who saw him. I mean, obviously, even in the image that we have, that they may or may not be him, but there were so many people there. It just seems implausible that whatever happened to this young man, someone didn't see anything. Are you?
Okay, so here's the thing. We want to know why the hell they kept the organs in the throat, right? I'm assuming further examination, but we'll see. 2, toxicology. If my opinion is, if the toxicology report says there's rugs or a high intoxication level, then it is and could be just possible that maybe he was walking. I don't know the circumstances of how he was left alone, who he was with, why they left without him. Of course, those are all unanswered questions, right? But maybe he was walking alone or wandered off and possibly tripped and hit his head. Drunk, water, not a good combination. Right? We can at least agree on that. And water is very dangerous. I don't do bodies of water, personally. And I don't go swimming in the ocean and the lakes. Absolutely not. At this point, you would have to pay me to. Sure, I like to lay out at the pool, do that kind of thing, have me some drinks at the pool, but water can be very dangerous.
Hearing from people
Bodies
who are
of
on
water.
the island.
We are hearing from people on the island and the Nolan.
And if he was intoxicated, that's right, V. Who bought the alcohol? He was 18. Well, that's what I said. Incoming huge civil lawsuit.
Wells tip line at bencrump.com is getting a lot of hits and submissions. And that 800 number that we want to encourage everybody to call at the Ben Crump call center is 1-888-991-1772.
Okay.
And we are going to take detailed information from you.
Okay. What have you heard from, your independent autopsy is complete now. Have you heard anything from the sheriff's department as to when their results are going to be available? Because obviously they have the throat. They were able to look at his lungs, and as well they're going to have the toxicology, which that's going to be the really telling thing here. Have you heard from them when those results might be available?
No, we haven't. And remember, our autopsy is not complete. It's undetermined pending further investigations. That's very important to note, Charles, because we need to examine the throat. We also want to see the pictures. We want to know whether his lungs and airways have water in them. Those things are significant if we're trying to be transparent. And they told us they're going to be transparent. So we're going to see if we can take them at their word. Furthermore, I think it's vitally important that we continue to underscore that toxicology is important, but it's not the end all. Charles, if he went into the water with all those people on Horn Island, somebody knows something, somebody saw something, and that is the crux of the matter. That is what's going to be at issue. The cell phones, all toxicology, all play a part. But what did people see? Somebody knows what happened to Nolan Wells.
All right. Ben, thank you.
Man, I can't get over it. I just can't get over it. Let me see what you guys are saying. And then I want to watch a little law and crime segment that just dropped before I came on. And then we're going to watch a 15-minute interview of the friend. Yes, people are speaking out now. So this will be interesting. Am I missing something, says Allison? What about his spine? Posterior would be his neck too. V says, have y'all heard anything about what in the lungs? The guy from Cajun Navy said his body didn't look like it was bloated. Y'all can stop with the drowning narrative. Okay, so you don't think it was a drowning. That's fair. I respect that. And you would not catch me in water on the 4th. Nope. Me either. It's possible he went out to view others and take a piss in the area and the area they were in said to be rough and had rip currents, so it could have easily happened. I mean, that's the thing is, I don't know if we'll ever know or what will be provided when the two MEs come together and talk or not, you know?
What were the circumstances that there's no
By Law and Crime, I'm Jesse Weber. So look, we have all been waiting for answers in this case. The family has been waiting for answers in this case, waiting for something, anything that could tell us what really happened to Nolan Wells on that island. His family has been waiting patiently. The public has been watching. And today, finally, we got something. The independent autopsy results are in. Remember, the family had commissioned that an independent autopsy be conducted. There seems to be this level of perhaps distrust in the investigation from the state ME. We know that they're being represented by attorney Ben Crump, and Ben Crump just stepped up to the mic this morning to tell us what they found. Now, briefly, a lot has happened, okay? A lot's been going on. But most importantly, to give you an update here, Nolan Wells' life was honored this week. There was a massive service. There was hundreds of people. Reverend Al Sharpton delivered the eulogy. Tyler Perry covered the costs. And before that service ended, Sharpton made a move that got everyone's attention. A $50,000 reward for information leading to a conviction in Nolan Wells' case. Perry matched it on the spot. $100,000 now. That's the total for whoever knows something that could lead to a potential conviction here. Assuming for the moment, by the way, that a crime was committed. The FBI has stepped in. They're looking into threats that were tied to this case. Tells you how high the temperature has gotten. And all of this is happening with the possibility of a grand jury looming. Look, as far as we know, after a meeting with the DA, Ben Crump said that the DA indicated that after the sheriff's office investigation, they may present this case to a grand jury. No timeline yet, but a possibility as we're awaiting the official results of the autopsy, right? Because I want to be clear, what I'm about to get into is the results, the preliminary findings of the independent autopsy, not the state medical examination's autopsy. We've been tracking every development in this case, and today, Ben Crump made this huge announcement standing at the podium at the NAACP convention with the preliminary findings. We know that Nolan Wells' body was moved to Washington, D.C. Again, the family commissioned this, they ordered this. And these are the findings that provide our first independent look at what happened. Now, before we even got to those findings, Ben Crump laid out why this fight for transparency even exists.
I want to thank you all who have called.
That mic is pretty
I want
bad.
to thank Reverend Al Sharpton. I want to thank Mr. Tyler Perry. I want to thank Mr. Terry Owens for putting up the $125,000 reward for anybody out there who have information.
Yeah, that mic is fried.
To the truth of what happened. I mean, videos, and we've gotten so many videos, President Johnson, from that day from young people, and we want them to have the courage to come forward with the pictures. What you heard, I know people said there were a lot of disturbances out there. Some believe it involved Nolan. All of those things are important to get to the truth of what happened. And so that's why I thank you all for being here, because this news is as important as any news in the United States of America, finding out why is Nolan Wells dead.
Losing a child, it's truly.
It's the mic from the NAACP, not Law and Crime, not me. Sorry, guys. It gets better.
You can't measure it. Especially someone like Nolan, who brought so much joy and light and life to everyone. You don't find too many genuine people like him. So to lose that light at such a young age under these circumstances has been absolutely difficult, which is why we've gone this route. There's so many people out in the public asking all of these questions, but the only question that we have is what happened to our son. That is the only question. And so it is our hope that our local authorities will do what they need to do, because us having the preliminary autopsy results and hearing nothing from them, it's heartbreaking and it's concerning, which again is why we are here, why we have asked for this help.
So now
So they haven't heard from them.
an autopsy results.
Maybe.
And here is what that medical examiner, that pathologist found.
Preliminary report, second autopsy, death of Nolan Xavier Wells. Cause of death, undetermined, pending investigation. The manner of death, undetermined, pending investigation. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation.
So what do you hear? Cause undetermined, manner undetermined, this red discoloration on the back of the head. But this is where it gets interesting. So according to Ben Crump, he claimed the United Cajun Navy found Nolan fully clothed, face down, even though Crump pointed out that the last picture we have seen of Nolan wearing the swim trunks with his friends that's been circulated everywhere, he's not fully clothed, right? He's not wearing a shirt. And you have this last video of him, or potentially of him, this newly surfaced TMZ footage recorded at 2:23 p.m. on July 4th, which appears to show a man arguably matching Nolan's description on a boat wearing the same blue swim trunks that he had in that famous photo. Again, shirtless, if that is him. However, this just came out. So the United Cajun Navy took to X and they said, Attorney Crump, we didn't say Nolan was fully clothed when found. He was wearing only swim trunks. Please don't misrepresent our words. Now, this is another issue to try to make sense of what the condition of Nolan's body was. Okay, so I want to make sense of this. I want to try to understand what all of this means. I'm bringing on one of our favorites in this space. This is Dr. Nada Rutherford, Richland County coroner. So good to see you, doctor. I knew you were watching this live. We were watching it live. I know you were taking a lot of notes as we were trying to make sense of this. There's a lot of different areas here to go into. I guess I'll just start with the big conclusion from this independent autopsy. And you tell me how limited independent autopsies are. But the fact that it came out that the cause and manner of death are undetermined pending investigation, is that something that surprises you? Or and what do we mean? What do we mean by this? What do we take away from this?
Number one, given the circumstances surrounding this case, I am extremely disappointed that an independent autopsy was not performed from the beginning. Yes, the state has a responsibility to perform the autopsy, but even the county coroner said, I want no parts of it. I'm sending this to the state ME's office. So if they were going to do that, they should have given this family the option from the beginning to have an independent autopsy.
Interesting. So the county was like, no, have a state medical examiner.
Because things are missing from this independent autopsy that as a mother, as a community member, don't sit right with me. Number one, if you were going to hold back any parts of the body, I feel as if the independent examiner should have known that from the beginning, and a report of what those findings were should have been sent to him. Yes, it is customary to hold back pieces of the body if you're going to examine them further, but why? What was there that you needed to examine? And why have you not?
Oh, she makes a good point. Why keep the parts? What is there that you further need to examine and not communicate to this other medical examiner? Smells fishy.
discuss this with the family. Transparency as a public official, especially in the role of coroner, where you are expected to perform an independent autopsy outside of the police's investigation. I feel that the coroner and Emmy's office has not been.
So the independent autopsy has to be done, yeah, requested by the family, and I believe they have to pay for it. So it's not something that is given on every case. The family actually got donations from, was it Tyler Perry? Or no, Colin Kaepernick paid for it.
Transparent and upfront with this family, and that is very concerning to me. Why would you hold back the neck muscles? Why would you hold back?
Let me play that portion of the press conference right now.
The anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death.
Dr. Rutherford, why would those pieces be removed? And are they being tested? You make a really good point about why that wasn't communicated to Dr. Mitchell, right, the person who was conducting this independent autopsy. But why would those pieces of a body be typically, or I don't know, is it typical to remove them, and for what purpose?
Yes, it is typical to remove them. Whenever an autopsy is performed, we are removing those internal structures so that we can further examine them, not only from a visual standpoint, but from a microscopic standpoint as well. Now, when we look at the neck muscles, we look at what's called the strap muscles. So if you kind of, just to give you kind of an idea, these are your strap muscles, okay? But right here sits your esophagus, sits your trachea, sits your hyoid bone. They specifically mentioned that the hyoid bone was not included in the body when the independent examiner received it. That's a significant point for me, because that means that they are checking to see if the strap muscles had hemorrhaging, meaning signs of strangulation. Petechial hemorrhaging is very important, but also bleeding into those muscles. The hyoid bone, examining that bone, being able to remove the soft tissue from it to check for signs of trauma, like a fracture to that bone, is crucial when you're thinking about possible strangulation or someone being choked, hit in the neck area, blunt force trauma. The other thing that's significant for me with this is that they could not determine whether or not intracranial hemorrhage occurred, which again is problematic because there was discoloration to the back of the skull. They noticed.
Oof, this is getting messy. Some people say they're leaving parts out, so maybe someone will tell them something that was not out in public, so telling on themselves, basically. Could the original autopsy show some things that needed to be investigated by detectives? Yeah. They beautifully says the entire town is shady. I thought the FBI was stepping in. Debbie says this case is getting more and more suspicious.
They measured it. Why
I was
didn't
going to ask about that?
Why was that not disclosed? And if there was no underlying fracture, fine, but why not say that? This family should know more than what they know. Even when we get cases like this and we have questions, we still tell the families what little we know and tell them, hey, things could change, but here's what we have right now.
So a lot of questions about this. Number one, the fact that those, I hate to say it, those pieces of Nolan's body are missing. Does that mean you can't even determine whether this was an accidental drowning?
Nope.
Exactly. Because I need to know when they received that body at that first examination, was there water in the airway? Was there debris in the airway? What were the contents of his stomach? Were there pills there? Was there alcohol there? Was there food there? That gives me a timeline on when Nolan may have last eaten. What was he drinking? I'm examining the contents of his stomach. How was his body found? Was he found actually in a body of water, truly inside of the water, or was he just on the shoreline? All of these things matter greatly when you are doing a water death, especially.
So if the first examiner, right, removed those body parts, does that suggest that they may have a conclusion, that when the state ME's report comes out with the toxicology findings, they may have a conclusion whether or not there was foul play, whether there was trauma to that region, whether there was drowning, that the fact that they removed those pieces would suggest they may have an answer?
They sent everything else. So obviously they held these pieces of Nolan's body behind to further examine them. Why? And if you weren't going to send the entire body, why? And
I like her. She's smart. But yeah, why?
you need to tell not only the examiner that, you need to tell the family that, you need to tell the attorney that, because that is significant information. This Dr. Roger Mitchell cannot perform a full independent examination if he's missing pieces of the body. Did you do a full skeletal x-ray to know whether or not those bones were broken? I really think the biggest mistake here is that they did not allow this family to go ahead and perform an independent autopsy, knowing the circumstances of this case.
But people are going to look at this and say, are they hiding something? They give a body over without, is that a fair conclusion? Or is that, like, again, I want to be careful about this and say, is this something that you've seen before? Is it standard? Is it a lapse in judgment? Is it a mistake? Is it sloppy work? Or is there something that is not, there's a lack of transparency?
Here's what I think. Listening to them respond about the condition of his body and what they believed could have happened to Nolan without even getting to the examination of his body is concerning. How can you assume that there was no foul play? How can you assume that this was an accidental drowning and you have not even completed the autopsy yet? That would have been mistake number one to point out in this case, not only from a perspective of being a parent, but also just as the coroner. I meet with our law enforcement and tell them, hey, please do not release this type of information without talking to me first, because I don't want the family to think that we're hiding anything from them. I want them to know. And Nolan deserves to have the story of his death told. No matter how harsh it may be, no matter how benign it may be, he deserves to have the truth of his death told accurately.
Sure. This red discoloration on the back of Nolan's head in this tissue area, I believe they call it the focal. You would know better than me. The focal. They call it the focal.
They called it a focal discoloration, meaning that it wasn't a diffuse discoloration, meaning it didn't cover a wide area. It was very specific to that area, so specific, in fact, that they could measure it to determine that it didn't spread anywhere else. So I think that's really important, because that could be a point of impact.
Now, could that be?
Oh, point of impact. She does a really great job explaining. Arya Barry says, yeah, this is a bad cover-up, raised more suspicion than there already was. Yeah, I know. We have more questions now than before.
From the examination, the first examination, the way the body was placed? Or could that be, because remember when the body was ultimately examined, right? I think it was July 10th, they say the body was examined, unless I think I'm correct about that. But could that be someone hit Nolan? Something happened to him and that mark would still be there, just assuming? Or do you think it could be something that happened after he died?
I think it's probably before, especially because there seemed to be the discoloration as it was described. And again, you have someone who is a non-medical professional reading an autopsy report, which I also completely disagree with, because it muddies the waters. He really should have had either Dr. Mitchell or an assistant, someone with medical training and knowledge, to read this autopsy report. But I digress.
I agree. Crump shouldn't have read it. But
the discoloration that they discussed, just want to make sure I'm quoting them correctly and what they stated, said it was a 12 by 8 inch red discoloration overlaying the occipital bone. So I think that's significant because this shows a blow from behind. No matter whether or not it caused intracranial hemorrhage or not, we know that there was no underlying skull fracture associated with it. So the fact that this happened to him, we know that this was a ante-mortem thing, that this happened before he died, because you don't really bruise after you die. We check for those bruises. Okay. We actually have the pathologist cut into those bruises and they look for certain things. Now, again, This body was found later. It was found in an outdoor area, but we don't know if that body had been there the entire time, or did somebody bring it
Right.
back and drop it off? They say he was fully clothed, but in all the pictures, he doesn't have a shirt on. There's so many questions.
Yeah, what did you make of that? What about the marked decomposition of the body? How did that
Again,
come to you?
very significant. It's so significant because I want to know what decompositional changes there were. Was he bloated? Was he waterlogged? They say he wasn't waterlogged, but again, if you're found face down near a body of water, wet things break down faster. I can't imagine that the shoreline is just dry. There's water there. There's moisture there. So is his face intact? Were there bugs on him? There should have been some examination, even with the forensic entomologist, to say, was bug activity present here? You can look at the bugs to help determine a timeline for the time of death. I feel like so much is missing here. And I think the biggest mistake, Jesse, seriously, is that they should have given this family the option to perform an autopsy on their own before someone else touched the body.
I want to play something else from Ben Crump this morning. Let's take a look.
This pathologist cannot rule out if any intervening non-accidental factors contributed to or caused the death of Nolan Wells. Understand, he's saying based on the examination of the body, he cannot rule out foul play. That is significant. With the following questions still outstanding, number one, what were the circumstances that led to Nolan Xavier Wells entering the water? Number two, what was the body position when it was found? Number three, was there water in the airway? Remember, he talked about the lungs and the airways, were they filled with water? Number four, is there any evidence of injuries to the anterior neck structure? We got the autopsy without his neck. We got the body without his neck at the time of the second autopsy. Number five, is there any evidence of any intracranial hemorrhaging? He said that is going to be very significant. Things that he could not observe at autopsy that the initial medical examiner would have been able to observe. Number six was the composition of what was the composition of the stomach contents? He talks about that being important because when was he found? How long had he been in the water? How long had it been since his last meal? All those things become relevant factors when you're trying to do a thorough and impartial autopsy. And number seven, what are the toxicology report findings? He said the best classification again for the cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells is undetermined pending investigation.
So they can't rule out foul play. How do the state investigators now respond to this? I'm imagining they're still waiting for toxicology results for their own autopsy, but do they respond to this? How do they respond to this? When do we receive the official autopsy from the state medical examiner's office? What's going to happen next there? I mean, I'm really curious about the law enforcement's response to this.
I think their option is to respond. I think it's the only right thing to do.
Yeah.
The fact that they have chosen not to respond, the fact that they've chosen not to be transparent and to share information, it's not just a failure of duty, but it's a betrayal of public trust. The public trusts you to tell the story about how people died, whatever that truth may be. And if they have something, they need to talk with the family. They don't need to have a press conference about it. They don't need to talk to anyone else but that family. And tell the family, hey, I want to share this with you, but I need you guys to not share this until we get all of the reports back. That's a very simple ask. This mother and father want to know what happened to their son. That's the least that they could do is respond and say, this is why we're saying there's no foul play. This is how we've concluded this.
And I'm curious, look, if there really is a divergence between what that medical examination is and what is here, I mean, it's already going to raise a lot of questions. This presser is going to raise a lot of questions. The toxicology findings, how much is that going to help fill in the blanks?
I don't know that it will. If there's nothing there, then it's non-contributory to the cause of death. But what if there is something there? This is a student athlete. This is someone who prided himself on his athletic ability and staying healthy to play football. This was a first love for him. You hear his dad speak so passionately about his son's football career and what he was trying to do. So I can't imagine that this is a kid who's just out here, you know, doing drugs and drinking. And if someone saw him doing those things, then step forward, say something. Because we know as parents that our children don't tell us everything that they do. He's a college kid. Maybe he does do something every now and again, but someone needs to say something. Someone needs to.
I think even, you know, as we talked about, having that video come out that could potentially be Nolan, that's a piece of the puzzle, right? More video coming out, establish a timeline. There's something to this idea about so many people being there, and you don't know who spoke to who yet and what those interviews were like. But again, you have to imagine somebody might have more information, because right now, based on this independent autopsy, and we'll see what happens with the official autopsy, that can only tell so much. So Dr. Nada Rutherford, thank you.
She's did a really great job at explaining some things. Crump just posted, before we get to the best friend interview, that'll be the last thing we watch. Crump just posted this on Instagram. Let me share my screen. He reposted a post about the neck. Literally just saw it. So repost from Lovings of Fire. Questions. I have been remaining quiet, but let me chime in. The hyoid bone, highly vulnerable during asphyxiation. The occipital area was red, blunt force trauma. Nolan Wells was tortured. This ish has my heart aching. Father God, we need answers. Side note, former nursing student here. So Crump reposted this an hour ago. Yeah, that's when you look at it like this hyoid bone missing. Interesting. This right here. And it's possible we may never know either. Please make sure you guys are hitting the like button. Now, this interview is done with Officer Tatum on YouTube, and he speaks to Warren Hudson, who is the best friend, and first time I think anyone's spoken out. So this should be really good. Let me just check in with you guys before. Yep, if it was broken, he was strangled. That's awful bold for a nursing student to say, hey, there's all kinds of things out there. Interesting. We're in the twilight zone. How do we get out? I don't know. I've never really watched this Tatum guy, but he got this interview, so we are now.
She's some very pointed questions. I mean, just straight out. The first thing I want to ask you is, did you kill Nolan? All right, Warren, we had a chance to get to know each other over the last, 2 days, went out to Horn Island. So I've had an opportunity to talk to you about a few things, and the things that you've told me have literally blown my mind. But the world haven't had a chance yet to hear your story, to hear Nolan's story through you, through his friend. And it's not just you, it's a bunch of y'all. But, you know, some of the other guys were afraid because of the threats and the violence that's been threatened against their lives and all of the above. But you decided that you wanted to take this bold step and give a statement and, you know, get your side out here. And I want to start at the very beginning of all of this and ask you, what was your relationship like with Nolan? Who was he to you?
Nolan I could describe Nolan in a million ways. I mean, Nolan was not just a best friend of me, but he was a brother. I grew up through elementary, middle school, high school, and even our freshman year of college. You know, we talked on the phone all the time. We were really close friends. And I mean, Nolan was like a brother to me. And Nolan lit up every room he walked in. He always had a smile on his face. He always had something good to say. I've never seen Nolan get in an argument with somebody and say bad things about someone. You know, there's a lot of people that talk crap nowadays, and Nolan was never that person. Sweetest soul ever. And I mean, I had a great relationship with Nolan. I've never got in an argument with Nolan. We were super close, and I've never said or will ever have anything bad to say about Nolan Wells.
Yeah, and you guys, you said you kind of grew up together.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know his mom, or how was that? Because I saw in the media where it appears that she may have said, at least I saw in part, that she said as if she didn't know any of you guys.
Right. Well, Nolan, a lot of the times was at like my house and at my buddy's house. We never went to Nolan's house and hung out. I mean, and my friend group's very, very tight knit. I mean, we hang out every day when we're back home from school. In high school, we hung out most weekdays and every day on the weekend. And I mean, we were never at Nolan's house, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I met his father, and I mean, in 8th grade, that's when Nolan and I like got really close. It was COVID year, and we were in class all year long together, me and a couple of my buddies. And Nolan and I just got super tight because we'd get a Waffle House once a week together, eat. And I mean, we were just super, super close. But his dad would swing by Waffle House, you know, and like, you know, hang out around us, but never, you know, I was never around Nolan's parents a lot. But I mean, that didn't change our relationship any. Nolan and I were still just as close, and he was just as close with my friends as, you know, anyone else. So.
And walk me through the day of 4th of July where you guys were all going out.
Right.
This seems like something that I would assume.
That's a little bit interesting. Best friends, but didn't really hang out around his parents or at his house. It could possibly mean nothing, just interesting.
That may have occurred more than just this year.
Yeah, of course.
Was it something that you guys did more than just this year? It's a 2-part question. I want to know, is it something that you guys typically did together, that you hang out often in this fashion? And then I want you to then walk me through 4th of July this year when the incident happened.
Okay. You know, being from the Gulf Coast, there's boating and fishing is very, very popular. The 4th of July, every year, my friends and I, or my family and I, are out on the water. I mean, that's the one day is guaranteed everybody's going out. And that's a known thing. Everybody's trying to get a ride out to Horn Island, or, you know, people go to Ship Island, but most of everybody from Ocean Springs and the Gulf Coast go to Horn Island. And, you know, we went last year. Nolan was on the boat with me last year, and he was, I mean, this was a common thing. My friends go on the boat when we're home. Very, very common. That's what we like to do. My friends like to fish also, and like to go on the boat, not just fishing, but like to go on the boat, like to go on sunset cruises, like to do it all, you know, on the water, you know, and
Party on the water?
I mean, Nolan loved to do that too. I mean, he was not like anyone, he was just like everyone else in our friend group. He loved to go on the water and, you know, have a good time with the guys. And that's what we did a lot. But 4th of July, everybody was out there. Like I said, like Nolan was always trying to go on the boat, trying to go out there with us. And he was always welcome to come. Nolan was always out there with us. And, but started 4th of July, you know, my buddies and I had talked about this week's upcoming, you know, everybody's very, very excited for the 4th of July from down here. Like it's a big thing.
It's a big deal.
Very, very big deal. And, I mean, I actually stayed with Nolan that night at my buddy's house, and I woke up at my buddy's house, and we went to McDonald's, got food. Nolan was not with me. And, I went and got breakfast. I had my buddy's boat hooked up to my truck. And well, first I ran to my house, then I went to McDonald's and came back, and the boat was already hooked up to my truck. My buddy Wyatt and I went and with my buddy, and we went, filled the top of the boat off, loaded it down with ice, and just got everything ready. Then Wyatt went and put his smaller boat in the water, which is the Palm Beach. He's an 18-foot Palm Beach. And I drove the boat from Fort Bayou boat launch to my buddy's grandparents' house. And that's where we all planned to meet up that day. And
you say we all, who you talking about? You, Nolan, or Nolan? And how many people are going to meet you guys there?
We had roughly 20 to 30 people coming on 3 separate boats with us. And so we were all following each other out there as one big group. You know, it wasn't just me and Nolan and a couple other of my buddies. There was 20 or 30 people spread out where we all met at the dock before, and then we departed to go to Horn Island. It wasn't just a couple of us. I mean, there were so many people, we had to split up between 3 boats, and we all left and all got there at the same time.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that's clear, because the statements that are out there made it appear that it was just you, Nolan, and probably 2 or 3 other guys, and y'all are the only ones that went out to this island.
And that's completely incorrect. I mean, Horn Island on the 4th of July is the most popular day to be on the water on, you know, throughout the entire Gulf Coast. I mean, everybody and their mom is on the water on 4th of July, you know?
So if everybody and their mom is out there on 4th of July, no one saw or heard anything?
There's no telling. I mean, roughly probably 2 to 3, maybe even 4,000 people out there. There were boats lined up off the island. I mean, there was 3 rows of boats all the way until my vision ended, until I could see of people there was 1 row of boats, and then there was another row of boats, and then there was a 3rd row of boats.
Yeah.
I mean, there was people lined up all up and down the island to where, I mean, who knows? I mean, and that wasn't just, we were parked on the north side, on the west tip. It wasn't just there. I mean, there's tons of people packed out on the south side and on the east end and in the middle of the island. But just where we were, I mean, there was easily 1,000 people. It wasn't just us.
Let's go back a little bit. I want to go back to you guys at the dock, getting on the boat. You're saying there's multiple people, probably 20 or 30 people getting on 3 boats.
Right.
What boat were you on, and what boat was Nolan on?
Nolan was on Wyatt's 22 Triton. On the way out, I went with my buddy Bart, because we had a lot of friends from college coming down, and I called Bart that morning. I was like, "Hey man, can you take your boat out?" And he was like, "Yeah, well, my dad's decided not to go, and I'll take the boat, and I'll take you and your friends." Of course. I mean, he's a buddy of mine. And so Bart pulled up at the dock, and I mean, I rode out there with Bart and a lot of the girls that go to college with my friends and I, and Nolan rode out on the Triton. And then we had a Palm Beach, 18 Palm Beach. There was 4 guys on that. There was like 8 people on the Triton. And then there was 8 or 9 people on the Triton. And then there was the rest of the group, which was ranged from maybe 10 to 15 or 16 people on my buddy's tide line, which is 24 tide line.
And so you guys get on, and I know a little bit more than the audience do, because we went out there a little earlier, because I wanted to see exactly what the drive was like, what the dock was like, how far it is out there.
Of course.
But I want you to tell, the audience, like, what was this trip like? How was the waters? Did you guys do anything in between the time you rode and the time you get to the island? Was there music? Is it like a big party? Like, what is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously music's blasting. It's 4th of July, man. I mean, everybody's really excited. And I mean, we had a lot of people loaded down. So obviously our biggest, we're just trying to make sure everybody, gets out there safe. And so, I mean.
No, we don't know. We're trying to find out.
On the way out there, it was pretty calm. I think it was blowing like 3 or 4 knots. I mean, the waters were clear. It was a great day to be on the water. Sunshine, not cloudy at all. And I mean, it was a great day to be out there on 4th of July. And so, I mean, we followed each other out, and I mean, it was calm. It was calm. On the way back, it was a little more rough, but it was not anything all my buddies' boats couldn't handle, or like, it wasn't like we were getting really beat up or anything. I mean, it was pretty calm.
And so you guys get out there. I'm assuming that you line the boats up, Because I'm envisioning the picture of getting out there and there's hundreds of boats.
Mm-hmm.
There's thousands of people.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just you guys on a deserted island with
Of
just
course not.
a few people. This is thousands of people out there.
Right.
And there's a lot of people doing what?
I still, and this is just my opinion, why did the friends have the keys and his belongings and not turn those in? If they are so-called best friends, like he says, I still think something is fishy about that. I really do.
What does it look like when you first pull up?
I pull up, and we pulled up at 10:30. I mean, it wasn't, early afternoon. I mean, it wasn't, but 10:30 is, still pretty early in the day. And when we got there, there was already 3 rows of boats lined up all the way, like I said, until I could see. And
you're talking, when you say all you can see, you're speaking about miles.
Yeah.
Of boat. When we went out there earlier, or not earlier today, but when we went out there, the island is massive.
Correct.
I mean, it's just several miles long.
Roughly 10 to 12 miles. I mean, it's.
So you think that the boats were stretching from one end to the next, or just a small area of about a mile or less than a mile of boats?
Well, I mean, I think there was boats all the way around the entire island, but I think some spots were more popular than others. Like the West Tip is usually very, very crowded on the 4th of July, and everybody knows that. So that's where a lot of people park because they want to be around other people. And the East End's a little more, there's not as many people, but there's still a lot of boats out there. I mean, it's not like every area of Horn Island is covered 100%.
Wow. So you get out there, y'all jump out. What do you do? When I say jump out, you're obviously not just sitting on the boat. The island is there. Like, what exactly are people doing there? Like, are you spending more time in the water, on the island, in the boat? Like, how is that look out there?
I mean, everybody, as soon as you get there, I mean, there's people on boats, grabbing drinks and, food, whatever else. Everybody's.
He says there's people that do this and do that. What did you guys do? Like,
fully prepared for the 4th of July. They bring, all the drinks and food that they need because, they've been preparing for 4th for a little while now. But when we got there, I helped my buddies tie the boats up because the tie line was right here, the Palm Beach was in the middle, and then the Triton was on the outer side. And there was about a drop off from where the bow was. I mean, if you jumped off the bow, you were probably about neck deep in water. But if you got off the stern, you were probably waist deep in water. But when we got there, we tied up, got, bow and rear anchor set, and we tied up all the boats, made sure they were good, and everyone just got on the water. And then eventually, next thing you know, it's our group. And then, next thing you know, there's 50 other people around us. And then it just grew and grew as the day came on. And, that's just how it was. Everybody's drinking, it's 4th of July. Everyone's just trying to enjoy themselves. And, it's a big party, basically. Big party.
Yeah. So y'all pretty much having a good time. Just like anybody would imagine, 18-year-olds, probably 20-year-olds, college students out on the island, women, you probably had alcohol. So y'all having a good time.
Yeah, of course.
And so where's Nolan in this? You guys out there, the friend groups are out there, 3 boats full of people that came out there that seem to be the closest friend group.
Right.
Where's Nolan in this in comparison to where you and others are at?
Well, I had a couple conversations with Nolan that day, and I talked to him and a couple of my other buddies. They are in a group. I was not focused on anyone solely, like looking and pointing anyone out, because there's so many people out there. I was talking to my friends that I haven't seen in a while from high school. I was talking from people I knew from college. I was talking to, everybody my age, and even people older than us were, over there. It was just a regular thing. We're all used to this. We've been out to the islands before. My buddies don't just go out to the island on 4th of July, but they go out, every weekend. Like, I fish the islands. I don't just, fish around Horn Island. I fish around Ship Island too. So I'm very familiar with the islands. And I feel like it was just a big, I talked to Nolan, and, Nolan was drinking. Everybody was drinking, most of everybody. And Nolan seemed completely fine every time I talked to him. We had just regular conversations, and, Nolan was making me laugh. I had a couple conversations with Nolan and Javon, Nolan and my buddy Jim.
So he's basically saying that Nolan wasn't drunk AF.
James, Nolan, and I mean, I could tell you, I mean, I talked to Nolan a couple times, but it wasn't like I was strictly sitting there talking to Nolan the whole day. I mean, there was hundreds of people I knew out there. So,
yeah. And Nolan said something interesting. You told me about this. Something he said to you, I would say would be indicative of y'all's friendship.
right.
And then he also mentioned something to you about that particular day and what it meant to him.
Right.
And could you share that?
Right. Yeah. So Nolan and my buddy Javon are talking, and I grew up with Nolan, and Nolan's just like I said, like just so joyful, like always happy. Like every picture I have with Nolan or picture I have of Nolan, he's smiling. I mean, like he's always happy. If I always need like a shed of light, I'm calling Nolan. And Nolan and I laugh and joke a lot. Like that's how our friend group is. We're really jokingly laugh. No one takes anything that serious. We enjoy our time together. I mean, there's never any awkwardness within our friend group. We're very, very tight. So if I ever need to get something off my chest or talk to anybody, I'm talking to all my friends. I'm not just talking to like specifically anybody. I would go out, like even if I'm having issues with something, I go talk to my group chat, and my guys are there to give me a hand anytime I need it. And all my guys are, all my buddies are the same exact way. Nolan was the same exact way. If you ever need something, I'm here, man. Like that's how he was. So.
And then you guys get ready to leave prematurely.
Right.
And like explain that, because you guys got there around 10.
Yeah.
It's now 4:30.
Right.
People are still out there partying and
Correct.
they're having a good time, but something happened to where it necessitated you guys to get the boat up and running. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's a bummer. So, Officer Tatum, who's doing the interview, is doing this in parts. So we only get part 1 today. Looks like part 2 says coming soon. So as soon as part 2 is released, we will watch it. I wish it was all released entirely, but I get it. I can respect it. Interesting. I need to watch the full thing to make a full opinion. That's why they leave them out in many court cases. Yeah, you can pass those, they aren't concrete. Anybody can pass a lie detector test, facts. They're not admissible in court. So at the end of the day, they aren't helpful. No, I didn't hear about that. Someone said that the friends went through a lie detector test. Is that actually true? Because I have not heard of that from Crump. So I'm not going to run with that. Beautifully Broken says the entire town is shady, the medical examiner, and keep going down the line. Are You Barbie says it went from Nolan to everyone else being buddies. Yeah, heavy on that. We want to know about Nolan since he's mentioning buddies, not even Nolan himself. Interesting. It's the first time I am hearing of that. It's so sad so many young lives gone the last year. Yeah. Crump failed to disclose that. Interesting. Well, we went through all the updates today for Nolan. We read the autopsy report, the beginning of the live, if you missed that. We watched the recent news clips, and we watched the best friend give an interview. So I'm working on some other stuff with Nolan Wells. So I'll probably be back tomorrow. The rest of the week will probably be heavy with true crime because there's a lot we need to cover and go through. So as much as I don't want this to be foul play, it's just looking sus. Yeah. I guess now we wait for the results of the first Emmy, toxicology, and the rest of that interview too, just to get more information into that day. RIP Nolan Wells. Very, very tragic. The mystery continues about what happened on July 4th on Horn Island with Nolan Wells. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to everyone in the chat who gave your opinion. Please drop a comment for the replay viewers, new viewers. Get ready. We're going to be covering some hefty stuff Mackenzie Sharilla, Ohio 16, Gypsy Rose, amongst a lot of other things. So keep your eye out for that. Courtney Clenny as well. And we will be doing, have been covering Lindsay Clancy. So we'll be back with that later. Warren was in the boat that Crump said left Nolan on the island. So they didn't do anything to him on the island if they left him there. I hope they solve it. I have a feeling they're not going to be able to. I just get a feeling it's going to be one of those like Jelani Day. Somebody said Jelani Day was still open investigation, and that was in 2021. Let me see. Jelani Day, that was a case of drowning with organs missing as well. But, you know, the investigation, yeah, it does remain an open case. Maybe the Nolan Wells case will remain open as well. I hope the family gets the answers they deserve, but it's not looking too hot on my end. Anyways, that is so crazy. Yeah, it is. Make sure you guys tap that like button, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.